This story is getting a lot of attention around the country. A Christian school defending their decision to ban a pregnant student from participating in her graduation ceremony next week because she violated the school's abstinence pledge. Pro-life groups argue that the school should instead be praising the teen for the decision that she made, which was not an easy one, to keep her baby. So in moments, we're going to have an exclusive interview with Maddie coming up. She's at the center of all of this. But first, Trace Gallagher tells us the story and the background from our West Coast newsroom tonight. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Martha. Maddie Runkles found out she was pregnant in January, and in February, she notified the school. The 18-year-old straight-A student was then told by Heritage Academy that she'd be suspended, removed as student council president, and would finish the school year at home. The Runkles family appealed, and the school finally decided Maddie could finish the year with her 14 classmates, but would not be allowed to walk with them at graduation. The principal issued a statement saying she signed the school pledge, then broke it, adding, quote, "Maddie is being disciplined not because she's pregnant, but because she was immoral." But Maddie thinks she's being punished because her mistake is visible, and she believes the school is missing an opportunity to set an example for the pro-life community. And pro-life groups are now defending her, saying her school is making it more likely that young women will choose abortion over embarrassment. And while Maddie Runkles is gaining support, she has also been called out and criticized on social media by her fellow students and their moms. But she'd be the first to admit it won't be easy. Watch.
I know it's going to be really hard to still accomplish all my goals and all my dreams, but I get to have a little guy following right next to me, and we get to do it together.
Yeah, Maddie's baby boy is due September 4th. Martha.
Trace, thank you very much. So joining me now for an exclusive interview with the story is 18-year-old Maddie Runkles, joined by the president of pro-life group Students for Life of America, Kristen Hawkins. Welcome to both of you for being here tonight. Maddie, did you ever think you were going to find yourself in the middle of all of this?
No, not at all.
I mean, I know how this happened,
Yeah.
But how did this happen?
Well, after I told my school, the punishment that they gave me was just like a normal punishment that any other kid who has broken the student pledge has received before. I was given an unofficial suspension, and I was taken out of all my leadership positions, and so punishment was done and over with. And then I came back, and they said, okay, in 4 months, you're not going to be able to walk in your graduation. So it was just dragging out my punishment over 6 months because they found out the end of January, and graduation is in June. So I just thought that was way harsh, and it's not like anything any of the other kids who have broken the student pledge have received before.
When you went to them, to your school, and your dad was involved with the school, right? He was on the board at that time. So he notified them, I believe.
Yes.
Right? And the first thing that they did, if I understand this correctly, was they wanted to hold an assembly, essentially to publicly shame you.
Yeah, that's how it came off because my principal said that discipline matters are kept between the student, the school, and their family. But then he was there saying that he wanted to publicly announce what I had done. And I told him that if that's going to be the case, then I'm going to tell the students myself. And parents were invited to the assembly, too. It was the whole high school, and some of the parents showed up. And so I told them what I had done.
You stood up there in front of everybody. What did you say?
I wrote a statement up just telling them what had happened, that I'm pregnant, and just that I was being sent away from school. And I got up there. My parents were sitting behind me. My brother was sitting in the front row. And I immediately started crying because I was so embarrassed that I had to sit there and admit my mistake when no other kid has ever had to admit what they had done wrong. And my dad read through the statement, the first half, and then he got choked up, and then I finished reading it.
So you stepped in, and you took over.
Yes.
Why, they put out this statement that Trace just showed, and they said, Maddie is being disciplined not because she's pregnant, but because she was immoral. How do you feel about that?
I agree I had to be disciplined. I broke the rules. I had no problem with that. I accepted my consequences, but I never thought that my consequences would be drug out. No kid has ever had consequences drug out like this.
And you've had backlash from other moms and other students? What's that like?
It's horrible. Because
what have they said about you?
Just nasty things. I need to grow up, keep my mouth shut, take my consequences. I'm 18. And that's not the point. I'm not trying to get my school. I'm not mad that I had to suffer the consequences. It's just the fact that I have been punished over the course of 6 months. And that sends a message to people, you confess, you're going to be made an example of, you're going to be embarrassed, But if you keep it, good job. We're just going to keep turning our heads away.
So take me through the thought process when you found out that you were pregnant. What options did you consider?
Definitely abortion at first because I was so scared, and I'm a Christian. I'm a practicing Christian. And, you know, I knew it was wrong. I knew that I shouldn't be thinking that, but I have seen the way girls like me have been treated, and I didn't want to be that girl.
So you kept the baby, and you were punished, you think, unjustly. Christian Students for Life, I know she could have gone to Planned Parenthood, she said, but she felt like they're not empowering to women, which I thought was quite interesting. What do you think about all this?
That's right. I mean, that's the message that Planned Parenthood sends every day to teens across the country, that you're not strong enough to do this. And what's so amazing about Maddie's story was that she was courageous, and she went to her parents, told them what happened. She volunteered to speak in front of her entire school.
She's a brave
I mean,
young
how
woman.
many of us would be willing to go and confess our
Terrified.
sins publicly? But what's happening right now, what's so sad about this situation, is that this is a national conversation that's needed to happen a long time ago about how do Christians handle the sin of premarital sex, but then if a woman gets pregnant,
What about
how do
the
we
mercy
show grace?
and the forgiveness part?
Exactly, and that's the question I asked the principal of.
Yeah.
What about grace? What example have you shown to every student in this school? What they have done has told every girl in that school, it's better just have an abortion and cover this
Just
up.
about 10 seconds. What's your biggest concern about what happens after the baby's born?
Just becoming a mom at 18. I'm still growing up myself, and I have no idea what to
You
expect.
have a lot of support from your family, I think.
Yes, definitely.
Maddie, thank you very much.
No problem.
Good luck
Thank
to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we prepare to honor our heroes this Memorial Day weekend, organizers of New York's Puerto Rican Day Parade are preparing to honor an unapologetic terror leader released from prison under the Obama administration.
Diana Berger Edison lost her husband in one of those bombings carried out by Lopez's terror organization, and she joins us now live. First of all, our condolences to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
You're quite welcome.
Diana, to you, he is no hero. Share your story. What happened?
My husband was at a business meeting January 24th, 1975 at Francis Tavern, the FALN, of which Oscar Lopez Rivera was a leader, placed a bomb in the restaurant which exploded, killing 4 people, my husband among them.
And just to let people know, FALN is a fanatic terror organization. They had been working to, I guess, free Puerto Rico from the grips of the United States of America, which it is a territory here. This was their method of doing so, and they committed over 100 bombings. Just tell me, you know, how outrageous is it to think that this man is going to be leading a parade in New York City after he bombed a tavern in Lower Manhattan, what, 40 years ago, and killed 4 people?
Well, my feeling is that his being honored by being Grand Marshal of the parade is an absolute disgrace, and particularly that it's happening in New York, where the FALN really had a reign of terror that affected all aspects of life in New York in the 70s and the early 80s. And for him to be considered a hero is, to me, is just unfathomable.
I understand. And let me correct myself. I said that he bombed. He was actually convicted of making the bombs and helping to put together the bombs. He was not the bomber of the tavern, but still a person involved in the organization and helping in that movement.
Yeah.
Well, he was convicted of many, many crimes. At no point was he linked directly to the killing at Francis Tavern. However, as one of the leaders of the FALN, he certainly, in my opinion and the opinion of many, should be held responsible as well as the person who placed the bomb.
Of course.
Certainly not deserving of being referred to as a national freedom hero, because organizers of the parade, not only is he going to be the Grand Marshal, they're actually giving him this title for the first time ever that they've awarded that. I want to go back to your personal story, though, and as we wrap up here, tell us how it impacted your family. You were also pregnant at the time that all of this happened.
I was 6 months pregnant. My in-laws, Alex's parents, had just moved to the United States from Montevideo, Uruguay. it turned our lives upside down. Obviously, my son never knew his birth father, and for my in-laws who were Holocaust survivors, it was devastating. He was an only child.
And to those who actually do think that he's a hero, what do you have to say to them?
Oh, in no way is he a hero. He's not someone to look up to. He's not someone who in any way is a positive role model. And I really would hate for any child to think of Oscar as a hero. I mean, that to me would just be, it's frightening.
Yeah,
He's a despicable individual, and even though he was not found guilty of the specific murders, he certainly has done nothing in his life to really be proud of.
And killed your husband.
Right. It's an outrageous story. We simply can't believe it. Just to let our viewers know, the NYPD commissioner won't be marching in that parade, but our mayor here in New York City seems to have no problem with this. He'll be in that parade, just to let people know that. Thank you so much for coming on today, Diana. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Diana.
And Nicholas, this is where I want to bring you into the discussion because you teach this. You teach trans studies. So if you would, give us a brief primer on so many gender identities that, in your view, require non-traditional pronouns.
Basically, it's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex. It's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex. It's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex. And I'm a historian of medicine. I can unpack that for you at great length if you want, but in the interest of time, I won't. So that's a very popular misconception. So essentially, when in my transgender studies classes, what we're doing is looking at actual research and identifying ways that current social issues related to trans people or things that are associated with trans, such as free speech arguments and claims, how that connects to the way that people are thinking, the way that research has been framed, the histories.
Give us some of the other pronouns that one would hear, typically.
I don't focus on pronouns because pronouns are actually part of a cis-normative culture. So what we do is learn about...
Well, I'm going to stop you right there.
Yes, I was just about to explain.
Good.
So we don't start from a cis-normative perspective. Cis-normative is basically the very popular idea and assumption that most people probably have, and definitely that our structures convey, that there is such a thing as male and female, that they connect to being a girl or a boy or a man or a woman, and then sometimes that will also recognize intersex or trans people or transsexual people, as you mentioned, because that's sometimes also referred to as a gender binary, so anything that fits within a gender binary. Assumes that there is male and female, and so very little is actually looked at to understand what's actually the case.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Can I step in, Steve?
Stand by for a second, because I want to let everybody else get in first,
And
then we'll get to him.
you either, so.
And how do you relate to the experiences that we have heard arise during this debate, where gender identities and pronouns are up for grabs, if you like?
I'm very skeptical of the ideology surrounding gender identity. I don't believe there are 29 plus gender identities or genders. I believe there's male and female, and then there's somewhere in between, and most people fall along that. And just people who are in between does not constitute a new gender. There are two genders, period. And that is biologically a sound argument to make, just because the argument that was made earlier in the show is that, or it wasn't an argument, but a claim that there is no such thing as biological sex. Well, that's simply not true. And yes, it's true that scientists, that doctors have, and researchers have been finding more and more factors that go into not only determining genetic sex, but determining the expression of those genes. So it's truly a fascinating, complex field of study, but that does not mean that there is no such thing as biological sex. Well, firstly, I have a lot of sympathy for people who want to be referred to by their pronouns. Obviously, as a trans woman, I know what it feels like to be misgendered and whatnot. And most people are reasonable in the sense that they would be reasonable enough to accommodate trans people and their preferred pronouns. And I'm sure, I mean, I would hope that if I were a student of Dr. Peterson, that he would refer to me as she and wouldn't have a problem with that. But at the end of the day, you know, a personal pronoun preference still is a preference for what language other people use. And at the end of the day, I don't have ultimate control over what Dr. Peterson, what the language he chooses to use, or anybody else for that matters. That's up to them.
Okay, let me find out then.
The problem arises.
Let me find out. If she were a student of yours, what would you call her?
She.
You would. Okay.
Well, I don't understand what the claim that there's no such thing as biological sex means, and I certainly think it's, let's call it an error, to suggest that there's some sort of scientific consensus about that. I mean, there's biological differences between males and females in animals and human beings at every level of analysis.
Okay, I'm jumping in here, because what about the notion he put forward at the end there, that if you do not refer to people with the pronoun that they prefer to be referred to, that is a form, according to the Human Rights Commission, of discrimination.
It's not just a form of discrimination, it's a form of hate speech. That's why I made the video. I said that we were in danger of placing the refusal to use certain kinds of language into the same category as Holocaust denial, and suggested that maybe that wasn't such a good idea, especially since there's plenty of debate to be had about gender issues in our society, which I also think are also in danger of becoming illegal, and quite rapidly. So it isn't clear to me how long we'll be able to have the talk that we're having right now.
Because I don't agree with why Dr. Peterson has been asked to stop abusing students on campus.
To stop doing what?
Abusing students.
I see.
And other members of our learning community who do deserve respect and do deserve to be able to work and learn and contribute to society in a place where, if they are physically assaulted, if they are...
The assault so far came from the social justice warriors who were at this free speech rally, and almost 2 million people have watched those so far.
This is not accurate.
Well, you can look at the videos yourself.
Because people have been making complaints about your behavior.
Yes, I understand that.
Yes.
Yep.
And so we're seeing a greater opportunity for social justice happening that many people won't understand.
Nick, can I be clear on something? You've accused him of abusing students by not using the pronouns they want to be addressed by.
That's how I see it, absolutely.
That is tantamount to abuse in your view?
Absolutely. Many, many global documents, many organizations.
How about violence? Is it tantamount to violence?
Yes,
How about hate speech? Is it tantamount to hate speech?
Yes, of course, it's hate speech to tell someone that you won't refer to them as in a way that they that recognizes their humanity and dignity.
Because that's bullshit! Get the f off the phone! That's racist!
Is it a cabal of radical left-wingers? Yes, it's a cabal of radical left-wingers, and they've been active behind and in front of the scenes increasingly over the last 30 years. And my estimation is that departments like Women's Studies have trained between 300,000 and 3 million radical left-wing activists, and they're making...
And they're all underpaid, so don't worry.
Well, they could pick higher-paying occupations if they wanted higher-paying occupations.
Oh, my God! Gucci down to the side like a Biggie Papa.
Are you kidding me?
Let's not get off topic here, folks.
In my Tommy boxes.
Words are tools, and people are always looking for new tools to operate in the world. And if you invent a good tool, like a new word, then people will pick it up just as fast as they possibly can. You really see that in English. But the words that are being required now are not good tools, and that's why people aren't using them. And so Instead, what we have is the use of force, despite the fact that that's being denied. Although we've already established that, at least in the opinion of one of the people on this panel, I'm already guilty of a hate crime, which is what I said I was guilty of when I made that video. Steve, the issue with the law is quite straightforward. The government is requiring us to use certain language. That's not the same as not using certain language. And it's a line, and this is the fundamental issue. This is maybe the fundamental issue. That's a line we should not cross. We should not allow the government to decide which words we're allowed to use. It's a mistake, and it's a mistake that strikes right at the heart of free speech. And the thing about free speech is that it's not the right to criticize your leaders, which is what people usually characterize it as. Is freedom of speech is freedom to engage in the processes that we use to formulate the problems in our society.
Secret document showing the extent to which the National Security Administration under President Barack Obama routinely violated standards, commitments, and the Constitution itself to spy on Americans without a warrant, something our next guest has been warning us all about for years. Here now, Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst. I could ask you, how did you know? But specifically, what these top secret documents say is that 5 out of every 20 NSA internet searches actually violated safeguards the government was supposed to keep sacred.
So the reason this is extraordinary is because this is one of the rare federal courts in the United States that meets in secret. No press is allowed, no adversary is there. We don't even know what their rulings are. But they released a ruling last night that they issued last month, which chastised the NSA for spying without warrants. The NSA acknowledged that it violated federal law, but the problem is far worse than the court has acknowledged.
Let's go back to the book itself. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution specifically says no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The FISA court, which you just mentioned, was supposed to be the instrument of that amendment.
Instead, it's the enabler of the NSA. It doesn't issue warrants that particularly describe the place to be searched or the person or thing to be seized. It issues warrants for groups, like everybody in zip code 10036, which is where we are now. All customers of Verizon, which is 113 million people. And its warrants are not based on probable cause. It's based on governmental need.
And we got a taste of what this means by the unmasking of General Flynn, because that was not a wiretap that was focused on General Flynn. It was a secondary or a tertiary.
You're exactly right. It was the use of NSA-generated data without a FISA warrant, under the guise of being for national security purposes, used for blatant political purposes, a serious threat to the freedom of the republic.
And it's not only the second or third person. They could go out to the sixth person.
You go out to
6 degrees of separation.
6 degrees of separation, if you do the math, covers about 330 million people, the population of the United States. That's what NSA claims it can legally spy upon.
Glad you're a watchdog. Judge Andrew Napolitano, thank you very much. Melissa.
Peterson, do you have any comments on the Nazi presence at your protest? The presence of Nazis and white supremacists assaulting people at your protest. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I don't like Nazis.
Then why
were they here? Well, how can I answer
Are their views in alignment with yours? At some point you have to realize.
I think that's a foolish question. Look, if you want to know what my views are.
I've watched all of your videos, yes.
Including
yes, I have.
Then why would you ask such a question?
Because this is my interpretation of your videos.
Apparently,
all of the people who arranged the protest against you watched all of your videos.
Do you want to disavow? I have 150 videos on YouTube.
No, your lectures, which sparked the debate.
Okay. Do you want to disavow the support? Could you let me talk to her for a moment?
Don't call me that, please.
So, I have 150 lectures on YouTube. There's 500 hours of my views.
Do you really think that you're worth all of that time?
So look, I will answer your question, okay? I've studied Nazism for a very long time. It's been 4 decades, and I understand it very well. And I can tell you that there's some awful people lurking in the corners, and they're ready to come out. And if the radical left keeps pushing the way
that sounds very much like a
they're
threat.
Going to come.
That sounds very much like a threat. That sounds very much like a threat. Would you like to disavow the physical violence? Trans people were physically assaulted at this rally in your name. Would you like to disavow that violence?
Yes.
So you wish that didn't happen, and you want to. And I'm going to post this online that you would like people to not to be more accommodating of trans people and people of color at your events in future.
I would like there to be no violence.
I'm a person of color, and I felt very accommodating here. I felt like my voice. Thank you very much.
I'm also former Muslim, and I feel like this guy's
I'm a person of color. There are many Muslims.
You wanted to disavow. You wanted to disavow, and this is the disavowal. I am not an advocate of violence. I'm speaking out the way I'm speaking out because I think this is a route to no violence. And violence is lurking. And you can say that that sounds like a threat.
There was no violence at our protest, though. There was violence at your protest. So what does that say about our views?
It's not my protest. You know, asking me continually freighted questions isn't very helpful if you actually want to have a dialogue. You have no idea if I'm your enemy. You have no idea about me.
You won't use my pronouns, so I'm pretty sure you're my enemy, yes.
Yeah, well, I know you think that, but I don't believe that using your pronouns is going to do you any good in the long run. I think it'll do quite the contrary.
What the?
Is that your medical opinion?
What, is that your medical opinion? Like, you are aware that non-binary people are valid in the American Psychological Association.
Is that your opinion?
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
It's about non-binary pronouns.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
no, it's not.
I'm saying that that's what I'm about.
To the rally? Were you there when I spoke?
Yes. I've been here for this whole thing.
Okay, well, I don't know that. It's a genuine question. Look, I think that's what's happening is that we're pushing over a line we shouldn't cross. The newest legislation is requiring people to use.
But you are aware that that's being put in place so that we can't get fired. We need to be written into the Canada human rights legislation, or we can be fired for our gender identity.
I'm not aware
Okay,
of that.
well then why did you make a fucking video about it? I've been denied housing as a trans person. These rights would protect me.
Denied housing?
I've been denied housing.
From the state or for the open market? So have you been denied housing, like, from the government?
It's illegal either way if we had human rights.
From the government?
I'm not
or have you tried to get a house like everybody else and they said, no, you're weird, you can't work? No, if the state has done that, that's a problem.
They said,
but if someone doesn't want to live with you, that's their right.
They said, no, you're trans. Really so no, if I had human rights, that wouldn't have fucking happened.
Yeah, you're weird. I don't want to live with schizophrenic
people. As far as I'm
concerned,
that's a terrible thing. It's too bad that that's happened.
So you don't want us to, but you don't want us to have protections in the human rights bill that will allow me to have employment, allow me to have housing security, allow me to have medical care. That's what this is about. It's not about infringing on your rights or making you learn a new fucking pronoun.
I don't think that's what it's about. What evidence do you have that attempting to transform the way that people use pronouns is going to produce a positive effect on society?
Are you aware that there is a trans boy who killed himself in psychiatric care recently because he was continuously being misgendered by his care workers?
And that is my precise problem.
And there have been multiple recorded instances of trans people killing themselves because they are not being integrated into society. We are not looking for special treatment. We are looking to be able to integrate ourselves into society. And if you refuse to refer to us by our pronouns, which is not allowed to ask, singular they pronouns go all the way back to Shakespeare. It's not a new thing. If you refuse to let us integrate ourselves into society, you create alienation that results in suicide. We are in a suicide epidemic right now. What are you contributing to this as a psychologist?
Man, you know, you're almost impossible to talk to. You're so full of rhetoric that it's impossible to listen to you. I would be more than happy to listen to you.
Yeah, really?
I was devoid of rhetoric. And yes, actually, I don't really think I am a rhetorician. Just so you know that. And you know, it's very hard to listen to you. I mean, it's very hard to attend to you
because
you rattle on in with your ideological speech.
It's not ideological. It's personal. That's what you.
It's not personal. You haven't said a personal thing.
I'm talking about something that affects my community.
It's just that when you say the things that you say, it tends, even if you didn't mean it to, it attracts people like neo-Nazis and fascists because they see an avenue in what you're saying to do what they want, even if that's not what you meant. They see an avenue in your in the idea of like a more abscondist form of free speech. They see an avenue in that to continue to spread their hateful ideology and to make more people hateful. So that's why the Nazis come here. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that's why that was.
I'm perfectly aware of it.
I have a calm, rational question.
Okay.
I won't get emotional with you. So who is this legislation harming? Who is
harming anybody who wants to use their own words?
So in what capacity? Be specific.
Look, it's important that people are able to use their own words.
Okay.
Because that's how we think. And if the government starts legislating how we think, and
so
how
if
we
I
speak,
wanted to call you she,
are you going to let me say?
no, I'm playing off of what you're saying. If I wanted to call you she and her and miss, because that's my freedom of speech, and if everyone just called you that all the time, and that was the only thing.
Can't you tell?
I think that you don't care because you've never had to face that, and it's a common trend among people who have never had to face like transgender-related discrimination that you think it's not a big deal because you don't have to deal with it.
I didn't say I didn't think it was a big deal. I said I didn't care if people called me that.
Public institutions, but it does prevent us from accessing healthcare. It does prevent us from accessing other services.
I'm not arguing about your rights.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. These things about our rights. I'm sorry. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you realize that right now, if you were to kill a trans person, because only for the sole reason that they're trans, that would not be considered a hate crime. Sure, they could be convicted of murder, but not of a hate crime. And that's what this bill. That's what this
in the States, they can use a trans panic defense in almost all of the United States and get off by claiming temporary insanity because they were freaked out by the trans person.
I am not claiming for a moment that people who don't fit into standard and traditional sexual categories or sexual identity categories don't face all sorts of trouble. They do.
Sexuality.
I just don't think that this is the way to fix it. In fact, I think
you do not a law that legislates protections from discrimination for trans people.
Not
is a way to, you do not think that.
That's right. I don't think.
Have you read the laws are intentionally worded? Most laws involving human rights.
Much trouble to as many people as possible.
What would we gain from that?
There is a conspiracy of intent. I didn't say it was a conspiracy. You think there is a concentrated effort behind these bills in order to specifically make the lives of people worse, and that's why we create human rights legislation to make it.
I think that people often do things to make other people's lives worse, don't you?
Well, clearly, as an example of this rally.
I am probably the most fervent anti-statist you will ever meet. I am an anarchist, and I do not believe that anyone who writes legislation has the interest of anybody but themselves and their special interest groups at heart. So don't come at me saying that I want to suck off the nipple of the government, okay? Because that's not who I am. What I'm interested is in that people I love are being assaulted, are being killed, are being discriminated against, are being kicked out onto the street, are freezing to death in the winter because they're being denied shelter. And I feel.
But pronouns are too much to ask for you to show solidarity.
Infowars.com, and liberals have finally hit an all-time low. That's right, they are doing drag queen story hour at little schools. I mean, kids that are like 3 and 4. Bringing these little drag queens, well, actually not little, it's pretty big. It looks like Bozo the Clown. Bringing them around their kids and going, who wants to be a drag queen when they grow up? What kind of brainwashing BS is that? Don't bring that crap around our kids. And you got parents that are going to come up on this video and go, well, I really think this is what I've been looking for my entire life. Really? A giant 300-pound dude with a wig on that looks like Bozo the Clown asking your kids about his hips? Negative, son. That is completely and totally wrong. But hey, what do I know? You're the same kind of people that'll get beat up and killed by ISIS and then go hug a Muslim 10 seconds later and then do another hashtag pray for this, hashtag pray for that, candlelit vigil here, candlelit vigil there, and nothing ever changes. You guys are completely losing the war of humanity. Take a look at this video.
Who wants to be a drag queen when they grow up? Hell no! I'm a girl. No, you ain't. Hips on the drag queen go swish, 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 swish.
Why are you even talking about your hips in front of these little kids? And why is it that I see a whole bunch of beta male cucks in the background with their cell phones out going, oh, this is so adorable. No, it's not adorable. You guys are out of your freaking mind. There's a grown-ass 300-pound dude dressed up like Bozo the Clown talking to kids about touching his hips.
Drag Queen Story Hour is fantastic because it addresses all of these issues of gender fluidity and self-acceptance.
Really? You're getting self-acceptance lessons from a guy who dresses up like a woman? Are you freaking kidding me? That guy can't even accept the fact that he might have a few bolts loose in his head. Why doesn't he go get a shrink? Why doesn't he go seek medical attention? Instead, this guy can't accept who he is, so he dresses up like something else to mask the deeper problem that's hidden below. that he is just a freaking lunatic. And then also, gender fluidity, negative. There's only 2 genders.
Do you get it? Everyone thinks that this girl is a boy because she's a little bit of a tomboy.
It's a man, baby!
Those are people who think that gay people are sinful or evil or, you know, bad to begin with. So, you know, we're sort of just starting from such different places that it's kind of irrelevant.
Whoa, so now we have a drag queen giving advice about sexuality at a school with very young, impressionable minds all around them. Sir, ma'am, whatever you are you a doctor? So no, you're not. You're a dude who dresses up like a clown. And you go and tell people stories, for some reason, about sexuality. And for some reason, these parents are stupid enough to let you come in and indoctrinate and brainwash these kids. You have no medical background, you have no medical history, and you have no idea of the side effects of things like that. You don't need to teach those kids those types of things. It is proven with science that some of the most worst things you can do is to have gay sex. Why? STDs, AIDS, all kinds of crap. Now, if you're an adult and you're a consenting adult and you decide you want to go that route, then by all means, whatever. But don't put that in our little children's heads. I don't find this okay. I think this is sick and disturbing that this kind of thing would be allowed into a school like this.
It's great. So much energy. Did you like it? Yeah. You know, that's what I'm looking for in all of our outings, is to present different ways of being in the world and make that fun and available to my kids.
The hands on the drag queen go jazz, jazz, all through the town.
Man, this is some